Thanks a lot, Lauren. All right, cool. We've got the challenge of a post-lunch session. But that lunch I hear was pretty good, and we're now officially halfway through the DevFest South Africa. And another just thank you again to the organizers and the volunteers. I think the day is going exceptionally well and looking forward to the rest of it. Cool. So what are we talking about today? The power of the Play console. First of all, why is this in this session beyond? It's about Android apps, right? Not quite. So there are a lot of people that can and do utilize the Play console and get different things out of it. We're going to go through that, and ultimately the audience includes Android engineers and developers, product people, designers, even marketing people. So we're going to go through all of that quite quickly today. And I'm going to break 3 of my own rules around giving talks today, and hopefully that will be with intention and it makes sense why. So the first one is, I think, the wonderful introduction that Lauren gave about caving and beer is enough to tell you who I am and why I'm an expert in this field. But I do want to just give a little bit of a backstory about why I'm talking about Google Play Console instead of some detailed technical Android thing. So I got into the world of Android development at least, 10 plus years ago now. Thoroughly enjoyed that, the detail of it, and helping Android engineers around the world ultimately produce better quality and higher quality apps, especially throughout Africa. That was my main mission for a long time. But as my career has developed, I've moved further away from doing the coding into the more product space. So working with wonderful teams in actually building products instead of doing it all myself. So as that change has happened, I've started using a different set of tools to actually build products. So I'm now more in the space of payment integrations and consoles like the Play console to facilitate A/B testing and store listings, growing traffic through acquisition, those sorts of things. So it's through that lens that I'm talking about Google Play console today. Not just as someone who's trying to push this thing that you should all use. It's been part of my journey. It's something I use, and there's a lot of value in it that I hope to share today. Also, another thing I'm not particularly fond of in talks is people who go and present their own company and say, this is an amazing thing. So Luno is an amazing thing, and it's the company I work at. But the reason I'm bringing it up today is that I'm using it as the basis of this talk. We used the Play console quite extensively when we relaunched this app. So I'm going to use it as an example of why the Play console can be so useful. We had this about 6 months ago or so. We decided, hey, that's looking a bit dated. Let's rewrite everything. Let's redesign it, the information architecture, the navigation. While we're at it, Java's pretty old. Let's do Kotlin. We completely tore it apart and rebuilt it from the ground up effectively. And we did it in 3 months. So yes, great job to the team involved. And then we tried to launch it to our 3 million plus customers. On Android, that was a little over 1 million, just under that had it actively installed at the time. So how do you rapidly rewrite an app and then get it into almost 1 million customers' hands without dropping any balls? Well, it's tricky, but the Play console did help us in a lot of ways. Ta-da, we moved forward in the future. So what is the console? It's many things to many people. Whenever I'm talking about the console today, I'm talking about this kind of thing, this interface where you can manage your apps and many things around it. So who here has actually used the Google Play console before? Cool, some people. Who's been involved in launching an app in their company or team or in some way whatsoever? Because if you have, then you've been involved in having this be a part of that process one way or another. So what can the Play console actually do? This is where I break the 3rd rule of my talks. I'm going to talk about a lot of different things instead of diving into the detail of something and really sharing that. So the reason for this is because there are many things you can do with it and a lot of value that different people can get from it. So let's run through the topics quickly. Store presence, and that's the listing. It's almost like your homepage on the Play Store. It's how you present your app, and that can make significant difference in terms of how many people actually install it or even find it to begin with. Then release management. So you've written the code, you've clicked compile. How do you actually distribute that to your customers? And then app quality. How do you ensure that you maintain a high quality, few crashes, great feedback from customers? Which leads into user feedback. The Play Store facilitates a lot of feedback from customers that you can read and reply to directly, and that's exceptionally helpful in building up the perception of your brand on the Play console. Monetization. It's nice to provide great things to the world, but if we're not getting paid for it in some way or another, that makes it very difficult. So how can you actually monetize an app? And then user acquisition or growth. So if you launch an app, the chances are you won't have anybody downloading it. You actually have to make it discoverable. You have to find ways to drive growth through your product. So maybe with a quick show of hands, I can spend more time on the topics that are more interesting to this audience. So quick show of hands in terms of store presence. Who wants to know a lot more about that? Some. Cool. Release management. Hands. A little bit more. App quality. Ooh, nice. User feedback. Okay. Cool, fair enough. 1-star reviews suck. Monetization. We all want to make some money. Cool. And acquisition. How do we grow lots of that? Okay. I'll stick to that kind of focus in our topics. Starting with store presence, we'll go through this fairly quickly. There's a lot of standard stuff you can do on there that builds up your presence, your overall listing. One thing I just want to point out is that the icons have recently changed on the Play console, and you can supply the same assets, and Google will actually just take care of that for you. But if you want to look into that, it's something to be aware of as a designer or front-end developer there. The title is most important in terms of actually attracting people to your store listing in terms of App Store optimization. So searching for your things, the title is the most important thing. And screenshots, in my experience, have made the biggest impact. So if you have great screenshots, people see that. It's a very visual world, and that can bring people in quite quickly, and I've done a lot of testing around that. And the video can make quite a large difference as well, but that depends a bit more on the product actually we've found. Cool. Custom store listings is one of the small things I'm most excited about at the moment, actually. So a long time ago, you could list your listing on the Play Store and describe your product, your app, and you could do that in a couple different languages. But you couldn't target different demographics. So you couldn't, for example, show your app to Nigerian customers differently to how you show it to South African customers. But Google recently introduced this concept of custom store listings, where you can have completely different store listings for different countries. It used to be just languages, but now you can actually customize it to a country. Here's an example of how we've tested using that with Luno. So we have the same messaging, same brand, but different imagery in some of our assets, depending if we're targeting Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia versus East and West Africa. So you can quite easily see how you could create content that is more localized to different countries, but still the same language. Release management. This is something that I've been very fond of for a long time. So before we get into that, a long time ago, Google introduced this way of sending out alpha and beta. Internal tracks came later. But it let you roll out your app to a small subset of customers instead of just releasing it all to everyone and then seeing there was a crash. So that concept of staged rollout came through the Google Play console a while ago, and they've really been building that up. But first I want to talk about app signing. So this is a relatively new thing. It was announced, I think, at the previous I/O. Google I/O, it lets you give Google the power to sign your app. So usually when you're building your APK or app bundle, you sign it with your certificate and then you upload it. Now you sign it with your certificate, you tell Google about that certificate, they re-sign it after they make sure it's from you, and then they can make changes between you uploading it and it getting to the customer. So one of the big benefits is that you can leverage app bundles through this way. So that means you can upload a bundle that supports all the different sizes of apps and different densities and languages and architectures. And then when someone says, I want to install this app, Google actually says, well, hang on, we've broken that big thing apart and we've made an APK that's just right for your device with your language settings, and we'll just give you that because it's a lot smaller. So that's one of the things that Google has already enabled through letting them sign your app for you. I think this is one of the things that I definitely encourage. It gives you a lot of benefit through Google doing the work if you just let them take care of some of that. There's more in the pipeline from Google's side around this. It also, I've heard some stories of developers losing their signing key, accidentally deleting it or whatever, or even worse, publishing it in GitHub, and then anyone can sort of upload an app over yours and take your user base. That's quite a tragic thing, but there's nothing Google can do about it. But if you do let them do the app signing, you can also recover from those kinds of incidents because you can renew and refresh that key that they approve for signing it before they sign it. So a lot of cool things with app signing. I mentioned release tracks already, but a little bit of detail and illustration around that. So if you've used Android Play or Google Play Console to release an Android app, you should be quite familiar with this. But it is often underutilized. So especially within smaller companies, smaller teams, going straight to production. Using a closed alpha group, usually sort of within the team, within the company, that can help get quick feedback on early iterations. And a public beta, especially if you make it opt-in publicly, you can get a lot of customers actually using your product before it gets pushed out to everybody. So a lot of value in this sort of staged release process. This is an example of how customers can sign in through the App Store, the Play Store, on their Android device. In the listing, you can have a little section in there, if you've turned this on, that says, would you like to join the beta? And they can do that straight through the Play Store app. Internal test track takes this sort of a step further, and it was released quite a while ago now. But this lets you define exactly who can get this version of the app. You can upload it, and they instantly get that version available through the Play Store. It doesn't go through the security and manual checks that most app updates do go through on the Play Store. So if this, you want to get to the people testing it in your team, in your company immediately, this is something that can be very helpful in that regard. I've spoken about staged rollout, and this is something that we use a lot at Luno. Everything we release goes through this process. Generally, we sort of take up to about a week to slowly increase the amount of people that have access to the app. And that saved our skin a few times when there have been a few bad issues going out, because it's difficult to test on all the different types of mobile devices that Android supports. So the only way to actually see if it's working everywhere is to start rolling it out. So that's helped a lot for us. Tiny bit more on release management. So there is the concept of timed publishing, which means that you can actually say, I've uploaded this now and I want it to go live at 9 a.m. next week, Tuesday. It's quite useful if you're doing sort of a new product and lots of marketing around that at the same time. There's also pre-registration, which is particularly good for new products. So you can have a listing up there, you can tell people it's coming soon and what it's going to have, and you can let them actually sign up so that when it gets launched, it'll get downloaded onto their app, onto their phone immediately. And a lot of companies have seen some great success with this, especially games where they're sequels after sequels. You can sort of get your customers to sign up for the next one before you even release it. On to app quality then. So there are quite a few hands around this, which leads me to believe there are a lot of developers around here. Developers? Yeah, cool, nice. This is a tricky one overall because there are often deadlines, there's pressures to get stuff out quickly. You want to build more useful stuff for customers, but you've got to balance that sort of how do you make sure that not only does it not crash, but it works well on all these different devices and setups. So why is it important to bother about high app quality? I'm speaking to the converted here, so that's great. But worth noting, the vast majority of 5-star reviews praise app speed, design, and usability. So if you get those things right, people are like, and happy to sort of rate your app highly, which is great. On the flip side, almost half of 1-star reviews mention issues with app stability and bugs. So if you get it wrong on the other side, people are like, So if you get it right, great reward. If you get it wrong, your rating starts plummeting and people get the perception of a low-quality product and brand and app. So how can we ensure that we maintain high app quality when we're releasing? So something that has been mentioned in a few talks. I know Pamela mentioned her talk about accessibility. The Play Store pre-release report is a very handy thing that I think developers are becoming more used to and more familiar with now. But it effectively, whenever you upload an APK or app bundle for a non-production release, Google's fancy stuff goes and tries to break your app in the background. So they've gone through a few iterations. They used to use the monkey runner, and now they use a more sophisticated thing from Firebase. But effectively, the AI tries to crawl through your app and actually test all the screens, tap randomly, do all the different things, rotate stuff around. And it does that across a variety of devices, different sizes, different Android versions, different languages. And you can provide some basic information to this, so some deep links to get started with, to access certain areas of your app, as well as credentials, so it can get past the sign-up wall. If you do have a captcha to detect a robot, your results will be quite limited. But then the output of this report is exceptionally useful. So it's been growing and growing in its usefulness. And it provides not only a video and screenshots of everything that it goes through. As you can see here, this is from one of ours, just the English language on a specific device, a specific Android version, takes a video of the whole thing, screenshots, the logcat, all the logs of what's happening. It also, this is just one aspect of it, it points out security issues that it's come across, as well as accessibility issues, and a wide variety of things that you can actually investigate and improve the quality of. Yes, all of these things that I just mentioned. And you can also get notified about that through who's got the Play Console app installed on Android? There is an app, yes. It's a really useful app because you can actually control a fair amount of stuff through it, but you also get notifications about releases being live, about these pre-release reports, about reviews if you're actually worried about that, which you should be. So install the app if you don't have it. It's really cool. And as you can see, this kind of trended result over time can give you a good view of how everything broke when you tore it to pieces and slowly got more and more stable as you actually focused on building it out. Android Vitals. Who's seen this in the Play Store? Cool, because it's really front and prominent these days. The idea is it tries to highlight the most important metrics around your app, so crash rate, activity not responding rate, stuck in wake locks, as well as excessive wake-ups. So the first two you'll probably be familiar with. Crash is obviously app not responding. That's if you try to do too much on the main or UI thread, so the interface freezes and it's frustrating. So the Play console alerts you about how much this is actually happening. Wake locks, that's if you sort of grab some aspect of the operating system and hang on to it. So that could be the radio for networking or the screen or whatever. And it alerts you to when that's happening or if you're not letting go of those wake locks. It not only sort of tracks and gives you information about all these metrics, but when it detects an anomaly, it will actually say, whoa, something's going wrong here. We've seen something worrying. You should get on that quite quickly. So again, the notifications through the app are very useful here, the Play console app. So the performance and impact of that, it can impact the visibility of your app on the Play Store. So if you're getting bad metrics, no one's going to find your app when they search for it or look in the category. So this is Google promoting high-quality apps. So you're going to want to not only make sure that it's high quality for your sanity, your customer's experience, but also so it's discoverable. Just out of interest, the data comes from people who have opted in through the Android operating system to share this information with Google. And there are about, last time I checked, about 100 million people submitting this. So it is quite a broad range of people submitting this, but worth noting it's not every single user of your app. And also, a pretty cool thing that it's becoming more common in the Play console is that you can compare these metrics and others to a set of peers. So what are peers in this understanding? It's apps that are like yours. So Google will go and find a bunch of similar apps, similar size user bases, similar categories, and define that as your peers, and you can see who they are and how they compare to you and your metrics. You can also customize that group of peers. So you can say, okay, we've got these competitors in our local thing, and maybe Google can pick them up. You can say, we're like that app, and that app. And you can track your performance relative to these peer applications and companies, which is pretty cool. Crash reporting. So crashes do get surfaced through the Play console and the Android Vitals. But not everything. As I mentioned, it's opt-in, and you definitely should have some form of crash reporting in your apps. So Firebase crash reporting, pretty decent one. It was Crashlytics before they merged with Google. And that we rely quite heavily on Crashlytics, Firebase Crashlytics. An important thing to do, I think, is to actually set a target of how many users you are willing to let experience a crash in your app. So we've set a target of 99.9% crash-free errors in a week, crash-free users in a week. So that means of the, let me try to get the numbers right, I think 400,000 people who open up the Luno Android app every week, only 1% of those customers we want to actually, or we're willing to let experience a crash in the app. It's a fairly high target. We're not quite there yet, but we're edging our way towards it. If you set a target, that means that you're actually working towards something. If you don't have a target, you're not really thinking about it, you're not monitoring it, you're not improving it. Okay, on to user feedback. You all said you didn't want to hear anything about this. Why? Is that because of the 1-star reviews? And like they even say, great app, 1 star. How do you deal with that? Yes. So worth noting that the statistics in the Play console around this are actually quite useful. You can look at it over a long period of time. You can look at volume and distribution of these types of ratings. You can look at the reviews separately. But Google recently changed the algorithm for how they actually calculate your app's rating. So if you're an old app, been in the store for a long time, and you've got a lot of 5-star reviews in the early days, you kind of just cruise on that for a long time. How they've changed the algorithm is to look at the recency of the reviews and ratings instead of just overall time. So it's a little bit opaque, but it's something like over the reviews from more recent times and ratings from more recent times are weighted more heavily. So what this meant is almost across the entire board, almost all apps took a bit of a dip in terms of their overall rating. But I think this is a good thing. It lets you actually see what customers are feeling more recently about your app and not holding on to those good things you did a long time ago. So it gives more emphasis to what's happening now with your customers experiencing your app. So this is an example of how that changed for us. We did take a bit of a drop there, and Google now presents your lifetime rating as well as your new Google Play rating. So you can see how it's changed within the Play console. So that's ratings. Reviews is when a customer actually leaves a message for you. They say something. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. And there's a lot of insight that you can gather from the Play console here, actually. And Google leverages their capabilities with natural language processing and AI to surface a lot of that information to you. So the review highlights, they take sort of the top 6 or so themes or topics that are mentioned in positive and negative reviews, and they say that the sort of positive things are this, and this, and some negative things are these. And that gives you a broad sort of understanding of what people are saying about your app. And then the benchmarks and topics. So they highlight specific topics and see how you benchmark against your peers again and how that tracks over time. So you can see we had some issues around accounts and working in the financial space where some people try to get accounts and they shouldn't, and multiple accounts, good fun stuff around that. People often have a frustration around this. So it's enabled us to look into that process and how we deal with these customers to improve that. Whereas the stability, as it increased, the ratings actually showed more positive aspects there. So we can see that a stable app is bringing our rating up, and account issues are bringing our rating down. A really important aspect is actually replying to customers. So when someone complains about something in a public forum, sometimes they're just venting. And they don't see that necessarily as a conversation. But if you turn it into a conversation, you actually say, hey, I'm the person on the other end of this, and speak to them like a human, that often changes the conversation and the perception that's presented externally quite significantly. Google's done a bit very recently to help with this, with smart replies. They launched that in Android a while ago, where you can sort of like just swipe, yeah, that's what I meant to say, definitely. And you can do that now with your customers as well. Use with caution, please. But a very interesting thing that they also show you, that if it's not clear, there's a massive amount of information in the Play console for you around every aspect of your app and your brand. And the effect of replying to ratings or to reviews and what effect that has on the outcome of those ratings is quite significant. So what we can see here is that we've had a lot of customers who will give a rating and a review, and then they will come back and change it. So of those that received a reply and came back and rated, the average went up by almost a whole rating point. Whereas those who didn't have a reply from us and then came back, their rating actually dropped a little bit. So basically starting that conversation, trying to help your customer, that can increase the rating quite significantly overall. All right, monetization. Whew, big topic. All of these sections could be a whole talk of their own. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly and talk about the types of monetization that any app can have. So first of all, advertising. We'll go through these. Advertising, you display the ad in your app. I'm not saying it's an evil or wrong thing to do, but it is not a good thing and maybe not the right thing to do. From my experience, I do think it has a rather negative impact on user experience. But it is an option, and you can implement that with Firebase AdMob. Paid app. You can say, if you want to download and install my app, pay me $1 or whatever. And that's been around for a long time. The mechanism is well understood. But what a lot of developers found after 4 years of supporting one customer who paid them $1, and they've been building this app over and over and over again from them, was, well, hang on, maybe you should pay at least like $1 a year or something. Before we get on to subscriptions, managed products, or this idea of within your app, people can actually pay for something and then use it within the app. So managed products or in-app purchases. So common things is unlocking features or in-game currency, that sort of thing. So you can implement that with the Play billing library. Subscriptions is where it's at right now. This has proven over the last few years to be the best monetization strategy for most mobile apps. It means people are willing to pay you a recurring amount for a service or an app. So if you're thinking about what's like a good long-term strategy for most apps, look into subscriptions first. E-commerce, that's sort of outside the realm of the app necessarily. That's if you're selling a product or service and you can facilitate some stuff. Google Pay, that's one way that Google lets people easily pay for stuff. And if there's one thing I've learned working in the payment space for a while, is if you make it really easy for people to pay money to you, they do it more frequently. So Google Pay is great for that. Okay, but it's not always that easy, especially in some parts of the world. So a while back, Google finally said, okay, we'll let people register for merchant accounts within South Africa and a few other countries in Africa. This means we could finally start actually having paid apps and charging in-app purchases and subscriptions. The uptake of that hasn't been that great yet from what I'm aware of, but if you have had any experience or know any people that are successfully using merchant accounts in South Africa or other parts of Africa, I'd love to hear from you. We're not quite there yet, so there's merchant support in 15 of the 54 countries in Africa, and about 20 countries can't actually even pay for stuff. So people using Google Play in places like Ethiopia, they have no means to actually pay for either apps or in-app products or subscriptions. So what does Google offer in terms of this? They do make it easy, where available, very easy to actually spend your money. So they do different ways of paying, vouchers, carrier billing, and offline. Definitely going to have to come back to this. It's an interesting topic that I'd love to do a separate talk on. But if you do want to go down this route, a few things you'll need to know about that is you need to get that merchant account. You need to have an app that people actually want to use. You can't make money if people don't want to use your product. And you need to have something that people are willing to pay for beyond just using. You can't just make money if no one wants what you're selling. And then, of course, a willingness to share your revenue with Google. So currently, Google takes a 30% share of the money, the revenue that you generate through Google Play Store. I think that's a fair trade-off. They do make this available to almost 2 billion people worldwide that are capable of paying. This will definitely be a separate talk, how to implement that. Very fun. User acquisition or growth. So how many of you have heard of pirate metrics? Okay, cool, not a marketing, nice. So where does it get its name from? The idea of acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue. If you say those first letters out loud, it is somewhat like a pirate. And this is all about, once someone finds out about your app, how do you get them all the way through to that point where they actually pay for the thing that you're selling? So in terms of what Google provides in this realm, acquisition, so you can obviously leverage Google Ads, and those are displayed in many different places. The acquisition reports within Play Console, I think, are very useful. It tells you how many people are coming in to your Play Store listing, from which channels, do they search, is it through ads, etc. And then how many of those people actually install your app. And then of those people, how many of them have it a day later, 7 days later, 30 days later, etc. So this shows you how many people are coming in, which channels, as well as the retention of those customers. The experiments, this is one of my favorite things as well. I've got lots of favorite things here. But there's a whole A/B testing framework available within the Play console. It means with your Play Store listing, you can say all the 10,000 people seeing it every day, half of them see that one, half of them see this one, which one results in more installs. And we've run a number of different experiments. The idea is to keep running experiments after you figure out something, keep trying it, keep growing it, and you can see a compounding effect. So an extra percent here, an extra 2%, that really starts making a difference after a while. So extremely quickly, I'll run through this because we're getting close to being out of time now. What did we actually do? Did we use any of this stuff? Yes, we did. So we redid the entire store listings based on product changes. We localized to multiple languages. We did get some custom listings for Nigeria and South Africa. And we also learned from our previous experiments, put some different screenshots in place, and we started some more experiments based on that. We used quite heavily the different tracks during testing. We ended up running a company-wide alpha for pretty much the whole time we were doing it. As we were building it, we were getting it out to everyone in the company. And we used a month-long public beta where we currently have, I think, about 8,000 people signed up to receive our public beta. So we got it to them first. The expectations that they had matched what we were delivering, which was great, and we could see how it worked across many different devices. We obviously did staged rollouts, and things were a little bit bumpy at first, and the Play console let us very quickly push out hotfix releases. We ended up doing 15 in the first month, which is almost every 2 days. App quality-wise, we really leveraged the pre-release reports. We could see what was happening on sort of a trending basis in terms of the quality and the crash reports as well. And we did a lot of manual testing. Customer feedback, so we got a lot of that. If you do have a public beta enabled, then if people give a review, it's private, only you can see it, the developer can see it. It's not public, so that gives you another channel to have that discussion with your private testers. We also did in-app surveys and usability testing. Monetization doesn't really apply to this talk and how we used it. We redid all of our advertising and growth material, and that is how we used it. It was rather successful. It let us move quite quickly in a very disruptive space and time in our company, and we mostly retained the level of quality that we were aiming for. And it's also let us measure the sort of Play Store rating overall is one of our key metrics that we monitor very closely and what our customers are saying. So the Play console helps us keep the quality of our product up. And it's not just for the software engineers, it's not just for the product managers or marketing, it's for many different functions within the company leverage the Play console. So if you want to learn more about any of this, there's the Play Academy, which is a pretty great free site. You can go and take their online courses, they're usually quite quick, and then you can learn in depth about any of these very many topics that I have very quickly covered today. So I hope that you either sort of dive into some of these things yourself for your company, your team, your app, or pass on the information to your product people, your marketing people. But ultimately, it's a great tool with a lot of power that can help you get the quality of your app up as high as possible and get those releases flowing to as many customers as possible. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Alex.